Hello, I'm Edward October. Over the years, I've narrated more ghost stories, horror shows, and creepypastas than I can count. And yet, the crimes discussed on our true crime podcast managed to scare the shit out of me. This program is not suitable for children or the faint of heart. If you are such a person, go ahead and switch off this podcast. Listen to something else. Are you still with us? Well, we've warned you.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, Kim, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. It's kind of a busy weekend this weekend, but
It is?
so I'm very glad it's Sunday and just get to relax. Well, after we record
I was
our
going to say
20 billion episodes.
I was going to say there's no relaxing. What are you talking about?
Exactly. But
So
before
what's going on?
Well, before we start, I wanted to start off by saying at the very first of the year, I did an episode with Farian Wardrip, right? Remember?
Yes, I do.
Bastard killer. Anyway, well, lo and behold, Jarrett Reddick from Bowling for Soup found it somehow, and he had commented on it. He had sent me a message on Instagram, or sent us a message on Instagram, and he reminded us, and I'm sorry I didn't put this on Jarrett, but Bowling for Soup is from Wichita Falls, Texas. So when we were going through all the things that are to do in Wichita Falls, we left out Bowling for Soup. So
just the most important part.
It is. But anyway, it was really sweet. He gave us a shout out on his podcast, Rockstar Dad Show. So that was sweet. So we're going to give Rockstar Dad Show a shout out too.
Check him out.
Check him out. Go listen to it. But it's kind of funny. The very first date I went on with my husband was like a month or two after 1985 by Bowling for Soup came out. So when it came on, we were just like really goofy and we were singing it at the top of our lungs, right? And then one of my kids' favorite TV shows was Phineas and Ferb, and Bowling for Soup does the theme song for Phineas and Ferb. And it was kind of funny because I was like bragging to my daughter, Bowling for Soup, they sent me an Instagram message, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I go, you know Bowling for Soup, right? And she started, there's 104 days of summer vacation. Yeah. So she knew exactly who it was.
Street cred with your kid there, Jen?
Yeah, of course, always trying to. I normally just embarrass him. But they're like, yeah, that's cool, Mom. So
what's for dinner?
What's for dinner? Yeah. Can you get out of my room now? Yeah. And also, real quick, on Facebook, there is a page called True Crime Podcasts, right? And people will go on there and ask for different types of, I'm looking for this kind of true crime podcast, anybody, blah, blah, blah. You know, you can give recommendations. Right. So I was on there and somebody requested something that they were looking for a show close to what we do, right? So I'm like, hey, why don't you try our true crime podcast, blah, 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 blah. So after I did, a lovely lady by the name of Maureen Lavender, I hope I'm saying that right, said, oh my gosh, I absolutely love you guys. You're darling. She listens to us. So she said, give me a shout out. Maureen. She said, give us a shout out. So here's your shout out, Maureen. Ooh. And then what's great is some other people commented after that, and they are Zena Wang and Patty Anderson. So thank you all for listening and saying such kind words.
Makes my podcast heart happy.
It does. And we've been getting a lot of other, and for all those people that message us, send us emails on Instagram, on Facebook, we really appreciate all of it. Trust me, when we sit.
You don't even know.
You have no idea.
About to cry, and we think it's, what is it all for?
When I say, when I reply back, you really make our day, or we really appreciate you, it's really, we're
not kidding. I'm not kidding.
So thank you, everyone, each and everyone that have reached out and said nice words. All right, that's it. Anything else before we start?
Nope, I'm ready to go.
All right. On the balmy night of June 28th, 2015, 46-year-old Dr. Teresa Sievers lugged her suitcases through Southwest Florida International Airport. At 4 feet 11 inches tall, Teresa was known as a little dynamo. She was intelligent, abrupt, forceful, and above all, caring. She always wore high heels, and she always spoke in an urgent manner. Nothing was ever blasé when it came to Dr. Sievers. And not surprisingly, she had been the valedictorian of her high school graduating class. A native to Connecticut, Teresa had gone to the Ross University School of Medicine in Dominica. She completed her residency at the University of Florida, where she was named Resident of the Year. She chose to go into the field of holistic medicine and was particularly interested in helping people avoid age-related illnesses. A holistic doctor uses the whole-body approach with their patients. Alongside more traditional methods, they also focus on factors such as lifestyle, diet, sleep habits, and stress levels. Dr. Sievers was highly respected in Bonita Springs, Florida, and had a successful practice called Restorative Health and Healing Center in nearby Estero. Some say that her bedside manner left much to be desired, and she could often be heard yelling at her patients if they didn't follow her instructions. But she did get results, and regardless of her bedside manner, her patients benefited from her methods. Teresa married her first husband in the year 2000, and they split up 3 years later in 2003, but remained close friends. Her mother called her Mother Teresa because of her generosity and willingness to help others. And just a side note here, if you want to learn more about Mother Teresa, listen to the Swindled episode. It's an eye-opener. So Dr. Sievers became involved with Our Mother's Home of Southwest Florida, and there she volunteered with teenage mothers and their babies. She also worked with Wings of Shelter International in Southwest Florida and the Good Shepherd's Ministry of Fort Myers. Teresa married Mark Sievers, who was the brother of a friend of hers. The two married shortly after Teresa's first marriage ended. Teresa and Mark had 2 daughters who were aged 11 and 8 in 2015. And while Mark performed the office management tasks of their holistic practice, he was mostly a stay-at-home dad. The 4 members of the Sievers family took a short trip to Connecticut for a family reunion. They left on Friday, June 26th of 2015. Teresa decided to cut her visit short and head back to Florida to prepare for her workload the next week. And there was no point of making Mark or the daughters cut their visits short, so she just took a solo flight home. Mark dropped her off at LaGuardia Airport in New York City, and it was the last time he would see her alive. Security footage from the Southwest International Airport in Fort Myers, Florida, shows Dr. Sievers walking in her typical brisk manner, pulling her luggage, headed toward the parking garage. She texted her husband Mark at 10:53 p.m. and told him that she had landed, was going to grab a bite to eat, and then was headed home. Teresa entered her house alone and in the dark, where 2 men immediately ambushed her. By the time the 2 men fled the scene, Dr. Teresa Sievers was dead and covered in blood. She had been bashed in the head with a hammer 17 times.
Oof.
The attack left blood and brain matter all over the kitchen. Teresa had at least 2 skull fractures and 17 crescent-shaped wounds on her face and head.
Oof.
When Dr. Sievers didn't show up to her office the following day, her business partner called her phone but got no answer. She immediately texted Mark in Connecticut and told him that it wasn't like Teresa to be late for work, especially without telling somebody that she was going to be late. Mark agreed, so he immediately tracked her cell phone, and that showed that she was still inside their house. Thinking Teresa may have had some kind of medical emergency and couldn't call out for help, Mark reached out to one of their friends, a neighbor named Dr. Mark Petrius, to see if he could go check in on Teresa. Dr. Petrius told Mark that he was out running errands at the post office, but he'd swing by and check on her when he was finished. And when Dr. Petrius knocked on the door to the Sievers' home on Jarvis Road, there was no answer. The doctor called Mark and was able to get a code to get into the house through the garage. Once inside, Dr. Petrius found Teresa laying face down on the kitchen floor. The doctor said she had been, quote, bashed in the back of the head and obviously dead. He shook her, got no response, and then felt her back. And her back was cold to the touch, and he knew that she was beyond help.
Mm-hmm.
He called 911 at 9:43 a.m. from the driveway because he was concerned that the killer could still be somewhere in the house. Honestly, that's pretty smart. I don't know. In a panic, I don't think I would
I think it takes
be conscious. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it takes your brain a second to realize, like, you just want to help at first. And then I don't think it occurs to you, oh no,
Right.
I should get out of here.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. When the police arrived, they found $40,000 in cash in the safe, plus Teresa's wallet, and there was no jewelry or electronics missing. So they quickly ruled out robbery as a motive. They also found a bloody hammer lying next to her body. Since Dr. Sievers often rubbed people the wrong way, police wondered if she had a disgruntled patient who maybe wished her harm. According to some people, Teresa was difficult to work with and had been overheard more than once reprimanding her employees. For a while, her business partner was a person of interest in the crime, and they were soon ruled out. There is a 2020 episode of it, and when this person is interviewed, you could tell how devastated they were to be thought of as somebody that would do that to Dr. Sievers. They were like, she really did say mean things to me and all that kind of stuff, but there's no way. Their feelings were really hurt anyway. Web sleuths were also quick to point out that there had been several holistic doctors in the country who had been murdered or disappeared or died under suspicious circumstances. In fact, there was a theory floating around on social media that the doctors were murdered to protect big pharma profits. And they wanted to silence holistic healthcare professionals because they knew some secret cure for disease that would render the pharmaceutical companies obsolete. And of course, investigators had to follow up on all lines of inquiry, and they could find absolutely no connection between the death of Dr. Sievers and a big pharma cover-up, if there really was a big pharma cover-up. Dr. Petrius had told investigators that he had no idea who would want to harm Teresa and that there was, quote, nothing in her lifestyle that could cause concern. He also described the Sievers marriage as good. But as often the case, the image people project to friends and family is not entirely accurate. That's the Facebook Live that everybody always posts. Everything's always
everything's
fun
great
and great on Facebook. The Sievers were in financial debt, and despite her thriving practice, the family lived month to month with no real financial security. When interviewed, Mark told investigators that his wife had never had an affair, and neither had he, although the two had experimented with other partners and, quote, swinging. According to Mark, his wife Teresa had a sexual fantasy about one of his friends who kind of looked like him. And there was even a rumor that Dr. Sievers had recently begun to question her sexuality. And at least one close friend of the family said that Teresa had confided in her that she was considering divorcing Mark. Mark Sievers voluntarily turned over his cell phone to the police to be examined. And after searching through the data on his phone, it was evident through, quote, numerous photos, videos, and FaceTime chats that he had had several affairs with multiple women.
Oh, and he just didn't think the police would catch on to that, I guess?
I guess not.
Okay.
Yeah, blatant lie, but whatever.
Man, you just can't. You can't
They'll
lie
never
to the
know.
police.
You can't. They're going to
They
find
always
it.
find out.
Right.
Oh, boy.
In the first interview, Mark divulged to officers that they had had 2 life insurance policies, one on her and one on him, both equaling $2.5 million. So that's $1.25 million individually. Right. 1.25 million. Now, he either forgot or deliberately neglected to mention that the other policies on Teresa that came to $4.4 million, that was nearly 3 times what he originally stated. It slipped his mind, like the affairs. Just slipped his mind.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
They'll never find out.
But it couldn't possibly be Mark that killed Dr. Sievers, right?
Because he wasn't there.
Right. In his police interview, Mark gave a performance of Shakespearean proportions.
It's not looking so good, Mark.
No. Knowing the cameras were rolling, when left alone in the interrogation room, Mark talked to himself out loud with dramatic hand gestures, kind of like what I do every time I make these things. And he began making statements to himself about how, if he'd been there, he could have saved her.
Oh, Mark.
And there was that unsettling detail that he spent much of the day before his wife's funeral at the beach.
At the beach?
At the beach before the funeral. The day before the funeral.
Clearing his mind?
I guess. Little fun in the sun.
Okay.
But the problem was he had a rock-solid alibi. He was surrounded by his in-laws over 1,000 miles away in Connecticut. Dr. Teresa Sievers was laid to rest on July 6th at the Unity Church in Naples, Florida. Mark gave a speech at the service ending with, quote, "I was and still am the luckiest man in the world." He then invited friends who attended the funeral to come back to his house, the house where Teresa had been brutally murdered in. Just come back and go swimming.
What?
Yeah. I mean, usually you have like certain friends and family over and you have like the meal and such, but
everybody grieves different, Jen.
I know. Let's go swimming.
Have a swimming party, but okay.
An hour after the funeral services, Mark was seen by investigators throwing computer equipment into a dumpster behind his wife's Estero medical office.
Oh.
Now, the police were beginning to get a bad vibe from Mark Sievers, but again, his alibi, unbreakable.
That just means he wasn't there. It doesn't mean somebody else.
And the day after his wife's funeral, Mark Sievers stopped cooperating with law enforcement altogether.
Oh.
One of the questions that investigators needed answered was the question of the security alarm on the house. Now, the alarm on the house had been deactivated at 6:09 a.m. on the day Teresa was murdered. Bonnie Sievers, Mark's mother, had been in charge of feeding the family pets while they were away in Connecticut. She had been to the home on Jarvis Road on the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th to feed and water the 2 dogs and the 1 cat. According to the Port Charlotte Sun, quote, "During Bonnie's visits, she used a garage door code as well as a security alarm deactivation code, both previously given to her by her son." The paper goes on to say that, quote, "Statewide Security, the company responsible for the alarm system, found that the alarm had been deactivated with the same code Bonnie Sievers was given at 6:09 a.m. Bonnie Sievers told the detectives that she did not get to the home until 7:45 a.m. and didn't know how the alarm could have been deactivated earlier using her code or how the residence remained secured. Furthermore, she told investigators that she had never reactivated the alarm because she couldn't set it correctly. And when Bonnie called her son, Mark, to ask him what she should do, Mark told her to just leave it deactivated because Teresa was due home that night. And if you watch this interrogation, it's gut-wrenching because Bonnie breaks down sobbing, saying
she probably thought she did it.
That she felt like it was all her fault. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and she just thought, if she could have figured out what was wrong with the alarm and if she could have set it properly, her daughter-in-law would still be alive.
Yeah.
The guilt that she had.
Oh, yeah.
So the question becomes, did a random intruder happen to get lucky and break into the Sievers home the one day out of 1,000 that the alarm was deactivated? Or was it deactivated so that her killers could gain access to the house?
I'm going to go with that one.
Yeah. Just 2 days after Mark Sievers stopped cooperating with the investigation, a call came into Lee County Sheriff's Office that broke open the case. Chief Jeff Hamilton and the Southern Illinois Airport Authority told detectives that somebody had come forward claiming that they had overheard information about a man named Curtis Wayne Wright being in Florida at the time of the murder, and they felt that he might be responsible in Teresa Sievers' murder. Detectives flew to Illinois and talked to the person who had overheard the conversation. The witness, a woman, said that she was home in Jefferson County, Missouri on Saturday, June 27th, and heard Wright's wife, Angela, upset and complaining that her husband had left on an unplanned trip to Florida to repair a computer at the home of Mark Sievers. It's kind of a long way to drive to repair a computer. Now, Angela told the woman that she just discovered that her husband was going to Florida the night before he left. Now, they were newlyweds, and they were strapped for cash. So he told her that she couldn't come with him to Florida because she needed to stay home in Missouri and work to earn money. And because his car was being fixed at the time, he had to rent a vehicle to get down to Florida. The part that struck her as odd was the fact that her husband, who went by his middle name, Wayne, left his cell phone at home.
Why would you do that, Wayne?
Right. She didn't understand why he would do that, considering that they'd only been married for a few months, and Wayne, quote, lives on his phone.
Mm-hmm. You know why you wouldn't take your cell phone. I mean,
Exactly.
we all know why. We know why.
The witness said that she was able to learn from Angela's mother that Wayne had returned to Missouri on the 29th. So that's a total of a 2,200-mile trip in just 3 days. Who does? That's a lot for a short trip.
I guess that computer didn't take long to get fixed either, huh?
Why didn't he take it to Best Buy? Have the Geek Lab or whatever they're called. The Nerd Troop or whatever. I don't know what they're called.
It's the Geek Squad,
The
dear.
Geek Squad, thanks, yeah. So then Wayne and Angela learned of Dr. Sievers' death on the 30th, and they turned around and went right back down to Florida to be with the family and to attend the funeral services. Angela's mother told the witness that the couple were nearly destitute, as Wayne was disabled, and Angela was a waitress, and that she had often had to buy the couple groceries just to have them get by. Now, how could they afford a back-to-back trips to Florida?
So desperate for money means desperate to do things. Let's just mull that over
I
for
think people,
a moment.
our listeners are pretty
I think they know
in
what's
tune
up.
with what's up, yeah. Police learned that Curtis Wayne Wright, who went by Wayne, aged 47, was best friends with Teresa Sievers' husband, Mark. And Wayne and Mark had attended school together in Hillsboro, Missouri, which is about an hour away from us.
Mm-hmm.
And the two had been in almost daily contact with each other since 2011 via text. The two began to look more alike the more they aged, and Mark often called Wayne his brother from another mother.
Mm-hmm.
They both had shaved heads and wore the same type of glasses. And Wayne attended Teresa and Mark's wedding, and Mark was a groomsman at Wayne's wedding. So they were very tight. Wayne Wright was the friend that Mark Sievers claimed his wife had sexual fantasies about. I mean, we only have Mark's word on that, really.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing in Teresa's communication that hints at this at all. And now, the contents of Mark's phone seemed even more interesting to investigators. Mark had sent Wayne his address on Jarvis Road in February of 2015 so that he could send him an invitation to his wedding in May. On April 29th, 2015, Mark sent Wayne a text that said, quote, hopefully we can talk privately tomorrow. Nothing about you and Angie, but it's personal.
Oh.
Mark flew to Missouri on April 30th for the wedding. Between May 3rd and May 17th, a series of texts between the two friends referred to gifts, mail, cards, envelopes, a condo that Mark owned in Missouri, whether Wayne's mail was secure at his home, and references to other and check other.
Why would he want to know that his mail was secure at his home unless he was getting something he wanted to make sure nobody else would see?
It's a head scratcher. I don't know, but the police believe that the other and check other was a signal to switch to a burner phone.
Oh.
After texting almost daily for 4 years, regardless of what was happening in their lives, their texts suddenly stopped on June 25th, the day before the Sievers family flew to Connecticut. At 2:17 p.m. on June 27th, Mark Sievers texted Wayne to say, quote, no need to call me. Hope you're having a nice day. Again, after that, communication between them ceased until June 30th, when Wayne texted Mark saying that he had heard about the murder and that he and Angela were on their way to Florida. Investigators' next step was to fly to Missouri. They learned that Wayne didn't make the first trip to Florida alone. His friend, 25-year-old Jimmy the Hammer Rogers, yes, that's what he called himself. That was his handle on his Facebook account. Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, Jimmy went along with him, and Jimmy's girlfriend, Taylor Schumacher, had much to say to investigators. She recounted the story of what happened to the police in a taped interview where she calmly and matter-of-factly stated that Wayne had made a frantic call to Jimmy about a warrant to search his home. Jimmy immediately destroyed his phone by stomping on it and throwing it into a water fountain. He then tossed garbage items that he had brought back from Florida along a Missouri highway just outside of the small town of Cadet, Missouri, and made Taylor throw blue coveralls out of a window as they drove down yet another Missouri road. Taylor later took investigators to the spot where she had tossed the coveralls out the window, and they were still laying there right on the side of the road. And although there was no DNA ever recovered off those coveralls that would ever link Jimmy to Teresa, the fact that Taylor took the authorities to where the coveralls were, it just speaks volumes. How would she have known where those coveralls would be if she'd lied? Taylor confronted Jimmy. She thought he'd gone there to kill somebody.
Oh.
Jimmy told her that he had gone with Wayne to make some money. He said that Mark had hired Wayne to drive to Florida to kill his wife for the insurance money.
Oh, boy. There it is.
Mark was unaware that Wayne had hired Jimmy to help him kill his wife, Teresa, and had promised him $10,000 to do so. Now, Wayne had issues with his shoulders and was considered disabled, so it just made sense that he would need some help. Taylor pushed Jimmy out for more information, asking him how did they kill her. Quote, "Did you shoot her?" she asked. Roger chuckled and said that he had killed her with a hammer.
Wow.
In the meantime, many friends and acquaintances of the Sievers had come forward to alert the police of what they thought had been weird or inappropriate behavior on the part of Mark Sievers in the days after his wife's death. Dr. Mark Petraeus, the neighbor who found Teresa's body, said that Mark had contacted him while in Connecticut to see how he was doing. Just like that, out of the blue.
Why?
Mark just called his neighbor just to check on him. Dr. Petraeus said that Mark had never done anything like that before. And it's not like he was watching the house or the animals. It was
babysitting.
Right. That was, yeah. Dr. Petraeus found this checkup call from Mark really odd. And it was almost as if Mark was making sure the neighbor was home because he had already picked him to find Teresa's body.
Interesting.
And while the foundation of the case against Mark Sievers began mainly as witness testimony, it's going to be the technology that's going to win this case. It always is, isn't it?
Always. Yep.
Investigators found surveillance footage from a Walmart in Fort Myers that showed both Jimmy the Hammer Rogers and Wayne Wright shopping for the usual murder kit merchandise at 11 a.m. on June 28th. The two bought 30-gallon trash bags, black shoes, black towels, water shoes, flushable wet wipes, and a lockpick set. And then somewhere along the line, Jimmy bought his pregnant girlfriend a Florida t-shirt because, you know what? Nothing says I love you like a souvenir back from your murder trip.
Right. My husband went to Florida to kill somebody, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. Unbelievable.
By the end of August 2015, the insurance company had refused to pay the claim to Mark Sievers because their policy was not to give money to the beneficiary if they were considered a suspect in the death of the insured. That's reasonable, I think.
Totally.
And of course, Mark wasn't happy at all about that. Next up for the police to investigate was the GPS on the white Hyundai Elantra that Wayne Wright had rented on June 24th for the trip to Florida. When police tried to download the GPS information, they discovered it had been erased. Only a few people bother with erasing the GPS information on a rented car. So they found this incredibly suspicious. And honestly,
why would you?
It would never have crossed my mind.
Yeah, me either. But it would if you did something illegal.
Exactly. They sent it off to an expert who could retrieve the data and discovered that Wayne Wright's first entered address was Jimmy Rogers. He put Jimmy Rogers' address in the GPS first. And then he entered the address of the Sievers home on Jarvis Road in Bonita Springs, Florida.
They are just not very smart.
When Wayne Wright and Jimmy the Hammer Rogers were arrested for the murder of Dr. Teresa Sievers, things got interesting. Wayne decided right then and there to cut a deal, and he was given an automatic sentence of 25 years for the part he played in Teresa's murder and for testifying against both Rogers and Sievers.
Wow.
Wayne claimed that he had been hired by his friend Mark to kill his wife in exchange for $100,000. Knowing that he needed help, he then hired Jimmy and agreed...
The Hammer.
and agreed to pay him $10,000 once he received the money from Mark. Which, you know what? Wouldn't you, if you found out your buddy was getting $100,000 for killing somebody and he was only going to give you like 10% of that, wouldn't you say, I want at least half?
Oh, if you get caught, you're going to prison for life.
Exactly. You'd want more than 10 grand. Well, first of all, I wouldn't entertain the idea. But
first of all, yeah, I would pretend like I was going to do it, and then I would set them up. I love you to death, but if you wanted to kill your husband, I would set you up. That's just not okay.
No.
I couldn't live with it.
Wayne also said that Mark had given him $600 for the trip to Florida because he didn't have any money of his own to do it. He was poor. Mark Sievers was arrested in December of 2015 and accused of orchestrating the killing of his wife, with the motive being life insurance money, and as well as the fact that Teresa was supposedly going to take their children away from him. And if she did that, he wouldn't have any financial means to fight for custody.
Unbelievable.
Now a prisoner, Wayne Wright testified against his friend Jimmy Rogers at his hearing. Wright claimed that on the night of the murder, he had accidentally kicked over the dog's feeding station in the Sievers home, which alerted Teresa to their presence. She was taken aback at first, but soon began fighting for her life. Wayne claimed that he hit her 3 times with a hammer, and then he couldn't continue any longer because of his shoulder injury. That's when Jimmy took over and continued the attack, hitting her another 14 times.
Brutal.
Prosecutors claimed that there were 2 hammers involved, even though only one was left at the scene. Wright also claimed that he had to stop Jimmy by telling him, okay, that's enough.
Oh.
Wayne also said that Teresa's last words were, why? Whether she understood in her last moments that Wayne was there at her husband's request, we'll never know. But she did know Wayne. She knew.
She knew.
She knew Wayne.
She knew. She probably knew then. That little flicker of realizing who was doing this and then putting it all together. I bet she knew. Poor thing.
Yeah, because why would Wayne be at her house with her husband in Connecticut?
That you're divorcing. I mean...
Or wanting to divorce.
Yes.
Yeah. Wright also said that the original plan was for him to kill Teresa as she was leaving work. But Wayne said, well, what if she's not alone? What if somebody's with her? And he said Mark answered, if she wasn't alone, that was even better, because that would be less likely for police to suspect him if 2 people were dead instead of just his wife.
Oh, he's evil. Oof.
According to Wayne, he was uncomfortable with that, and so the plan was changed to just kill Teresa at home. Jimmy didn't testify on his own behalf, and while there's no physical evidence linking him to the crime scene, the combination of Wayne's testimony, Taylor's testimony, his girlfriend who was pregnant with his child and had nothing to gain by lying, and the surveillance footage from Walmart in Fort Myers, Florida, along with his obvious attempt at getting rid of evidence, like throwing his phone out in a fountain, tossing clothes and trash out the car window, in this desolate road in Missouri. This led the jury to find Jimmy Rogers guilty, and he's now serving a life sentence. And he, of course, has filed for an appeal, and for the first time gave a public interview in which he said that he never laid a hand on Teresa Sievers, and he was just along to help Wayne. Well, he was along to help Wayne kill Teresa, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that doesn't, no. I mean, every single person that gets caught is going to say that.
Right.
Doesn't matter. You were there.
And just standing by to let it happen is just as bad. The defense for Mark Sievers took an interesting approach. They claimed that Wayne was obsessed with Mark and wanted to be Mark, and that's why they looked so much alike. They claim he had deliberately groomed himself to look like Mark, and while they do resemble each other at first glance, it's primarily because of the shaved head and glasses. There's got to be more than 1 million other 40-something males in America who have shaved heads and glasses. The defense claimed that Wayne was so jealous of Mark that he drove all the way to Florida in a jealous rage, disabled and broke, mind you, promising Jimmy money that he didn't have and never would have, just to kill his best friend's wife because he was jealous of Mark and wanted to be Mark, or that he was in love with Mark.
Totally plausible.
And I mean, being jealous of your best friend or even being in love with your best friend, it's not uncommon. The jury would have been more likely to believe that if there had been anything to prove it. There's no proof. There's no stalking behavior on the part of Wayne Wright towards Mark. No witnesses claimed to have a conversation with Wayne that would indicate that he was obsessed with Mark. Nothing in Wayne's demeanor or behavior would lead anybody to believe that he was out of his mind, jealous of his friend Mark, or in love with Mark. And in the day of electronic footprints, one would think there would be something in the way of texts, social media posts, something displaying this obsession and jealousy. But there was nothing, nada, nil.
Because it didn't exist.
What we do have are primarily texts from Mark and his wife, ranging from the more sexually charged comments to mundane day-to-day text messages about grocery lists and, the daily routine. Teresa was often exasperated when working or getting ready for an event at the time of the texts. And according to one newspaper, quote, their sexual appetite for one another, according to text messages, began to waver with sexually explicit exchanges diminishing in the months leading to her death. The tone of Mark Sievers' text began to change. He voices anger toward his wife when she did not respond. In February of 2015, Mark Sievers asked his wife what she was wearing and was met with silence. "Why are you not even responding at all?" he texted her.
Oh.
As for
Anger
Mark's... Yeah.
It's never good.
As for Mark's claim that Wayne was Teresa's sexual fantasy, again, there's nothing outside of Mark's testimony that would prove that. There were no texts between the doctor and Wayne, no flirtatious social media posts, nothing. And if she were questioning her sexuality, as some have claimed, it seems as though Wayne just wouldn't be where her interests lay. Teresa's sexuality or sexual fantasy really doesn't have much bearing as to why she was killed anyway. Nothing. Red herring, that's it. The jury realized that there was no reason for Wayne Wright and Jimmy Rogers to be in Florida. No reason for them to have bought the murder kit items from Walmart. No reason to erase the GPS or try to destroy evidence, and no reason to have murdered Teresa Sievers without the promise of a cash payout. And how would Wayne and Jimmy know Teresa would have been home alone that night? How did they know that the alarm wouldn't be set?
Oh, I think we know.
I mean, it would have put a real kink in their plans to drive all the way down there to murder her in a jealous rage, only to find out that they couldn't get into the house because, of the alarm. Yep. Or she wasn't home, right? They had to have had inside knowledge. And why would Wayne and Mark have burner phones to communicate with each other? I mean, how many friends need burner phones? You and I don't. We just delete everything.
No, we do not.
Right? I mean, none of this made any sense unless Mark had orchestrated the whole thing. And while some of these events can be dismissed if taken individually, when you put them all together, it leads to only one conclusion. Nobody except Mark would benefit from Teresa's death. And while defense lawyers pointed out that Teresa was worth more to Mark alive than dead, it's only true if Mark remained her husband.
Yep.
If Teresa divorced Mark, he wouldn't see any of her money in the future. He had to get the money before he was out of the picture.
It's so terrible.
And the jury found Mark guilty and sentenced him to death. In this case, the judge had a difficult time with the sentencing. Mark and Teresa's oldest daughter had sent the judge a letter asking him to spare her father's life. And even though she didn't want a relationship with him at this time, if he were executed, it would remove any chance of having a relationship with him down the road. So,
yeah, just
in case she changed her mind. There's also the fact that Mark didn't actually commit the act of murder because he never laid a hand on her. Ever. Never laid a hand on Teresa. That night, at least.
But he had it done.
During the victim impact statement from Teresa's mother, Mark Sievers made the motions of crying, but not one single tear escaped his eyes. The judge said, quote, "I judge people's actions, not their souls. If I am wrong, may God have mercy on both of us." With that, the judge sentenced Mark to death. Mark Sievers is currently the only prisoner on death row in Florida who never laid a finger on his victim. There's more. I mean, he did his mom dirty. He did the Dr. Petraeus dirty by putting them in the situations that they were in. Like his mother, like if you watch the interrogation when she breaks down, it's horrible.
Yeah.
And to find Teresa's bludgeoned body on the kitchen floor,
Mm-hmm.
no regard for
Nope.
Dr. Petraeus.
Nope, he doesn't
Right?
care.
And his own mother, no regard for her.
Sociopath, for sure. Psychopath.
Horrible. Over money. I get it. Money's great. I'd be darling
But
at being rich, but I'm not going to kill anybody over it.
Well,
I
I
don't-
think you're quite sane, too. So there's that. I think you have to be a little bit insane to commit such an act.
To plan it
somebody
all?
and that you loved. And then you drag other people in it. I mean, this isn't just like a crime of passion where you just got really angry and did it. This was thought out over a nice long time. And
long
put
time.
people into play. They needed to be at certain places for this all to unfold the way he had envisioned it.
Mhm.
It's a lot.
Yep. It's kind of funny because I don't remember this ever being on the news. I guess I was not paying attention, but you would think that it was so close to where we live that
Yeah.
it would have been bigger
Yeah.
than what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
2 guys within an hour's drive was
Well,
in this
that's-
big murder tour. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. So
Well-
everybody's right where they need to be.
Yep.
So-
Ugh, unbelievable. Well, good job, Jen.
Thanks.
Um,
Thanks.
I don't even know. I know that like Dateline or 48 Hours or 2020, one of them did a big thing on this case. And
Yeah,
that's what I
2020 did.
remember.
Yeah,
that's what
2020
I
did
remember
with
saying.
Aaron Moriarty.
Hey, Jen, do you want to tell the good folks? I think I did it last week. Tell the good folks about our exciting news, not this summer, but next
But
summer.
next summer, you mean our little trip that we are taking to the UK for a dark history tour?
With our True
That-
Crime podcast, Jen
Yes.
and Cam.
It's going to be so much fun. We leave
Come go on
on
vacation with us.
Yeah, it's simple. 2025, June 13th through the 22nd, we are headed to Edinburgh, York, and London. And we're going to explore like all the haunted happenings of these beautiful
I'm so
old
excited.
ancient cities. You know, think ghost tours, think murder mysteries, all that kind of good stuff. It's going to be a great tour. I'm not going to lie, it's expensive, but it's a once in a lifetime trip, right?
And almost everything that you would ever need is covered: hotel, flights, tour buses, tour
Right.
guides.
Yeah, 8 nights at handpicked hotels. You get a
4-star.
breakfast every day. You get 2 dinners, which include beer or wine. There's 7 sightseeing tours with tour directors. There's local guides that are going to help us. There's going to be a deluxe motor coach that takes us to all these places. And the best part is Cam and I, we planned this. This is you're not going to get this
You
any
will
other
not
tour.
get this. This is
We
original.
customized it to
Keep
us.
going.
Yeah.
Original.
Yeah, it's unique to us. Nobody else is going to have this tour. It's going to be us. I mean, you could go and do all these tours on your own, but this one is special to us.
In fact, Jen,
Yeah.
I think this has never been done before. If I'm not
I think
mistaken.
we are the first podcast.
We are the first podcast to do this.
I mean, I think there's another one that's bigger than us that are trying to do this, but I don't think they're going to go out of the country. But it's going to be
So ideally, we
Right.
want to make this a yearly thing,
yeah,
or maybe
starting
every other
next
year.
Yeah, but we're doing this for next year, so there's plenty of time to save. You have $99 is all you need for a down payment.
That's it.
If you need help or if you want more information, let us know. You can contact us at ourtruecrimepodcast@gmail.com and we can get you in touch with the tour company. They can call you. We can have them call you and you guys can discuss it and have all the info there. It's going to be fun. I'm telling
There
you.
are a few different ways to pay, so don't think that you have to have it all up front or you have to wait till the back. There's a couple different ways to do that.
Right. I
And
think
mean,
one of
let's
the
be
payments,
honest.
one of the payments
doesn't
is you
wanna-
pay $450 down and then you pay the rest whenever you can. But it has to be done by March of next year, March of 2025.
Which is 12 months away. That's
Right.
a long time. And let's be honest, who doesn't want to go on vacation with Cam? I mean, am I right? And I mean Jen, and Jen too.
Well, I'm telling you,
Mostly Cam.
I've been on vacation with Cam and I am fun, as I'm just going to tell you that. But anyway, if you want, you can call this number. We're going to put it in the show notes, but you can call 1-800-538-7672. And then you use the reference code 709-71994. And people there can get you set up. But if you just have questions and anything like that, send us an email and we will forward all your information to the tour company, which is a great tour company, by the way. We'll have them call you and they can answer all your questions.
It's going to be a blast, you guys. I'm telling you, I cannot wait.
I'm so excited to shop in the shambles in York and then London. There's so much I want to see in London, right?
You know what I'm excited about?
The beer?
Well, yeah, that, but what else?
I don't know.
Accents. Perfecting my accent.
I'm trying to forget about that. But yeah.
Oh, you say that now. You'll love it later.
I'm going to always say that. I've said it for the past 40 some odd years. You can put that on my tombstone.
I told her to shut up. Oh, anyway.
Stop it.
All
but anyway,
right.
Seriously, I'll post again on our website at ourtruecrimepodcast.com and it'll have more information there. It'll have that. I'll put some in the show notes. We're plastering this stuff everywhere because we want you to join us. We've got it half booked. Actually, a little bit more than half booked.
This is what we want. We want a busload full of new besties. Mm-hmm. That's all. And we already have that one thing in common. We all like true crime. Obviously, we like to travel. And we like people. So
we want to go and we want to have fun with you guys.
You guys are going to be our new lifetime besties.
And in fact, it's kind of funny.
I'll dump Jen and one of you can apply for that spot. Yeah, you can be my new bestie.
I warn you against that, but be on your own for that. But anyway, we like going to like these conventions and meeting people, but we don't get a lot of time to actually get to know people. It's just like quick, whatever. So this is like a great time to come. We're on even ground and it's just going to be fun to be tourists together and get to know each other. And it's going to be a great time.
Yes, it is.
So,
all right, Jen, I think that's about it. Until next time, remember, lock your doors.
Keep passing by those open windows.
Bye-bye.
Love ya. Come travel with us.
Come
play with us. Come play with us.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. For more information about this episode, as well as all other sources, please check out our show notes or the podcast website at ourtruecrimepodcast.com. Our True Crime Podcast is developed and created by the hosts, Jen and Cam. Original music and audio mix of all our True Crime Podcast episodes is courtesy of Nico Vertesi from We Talk of Dreams. You can reach Nico at wetalkofdreams.com. Listener discretion is provided by Edward October from OctoberPod VHS. You can find all of his great works on YouTube. Please make sure to like and subscribe to our True Crime Podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. We can be reached on Instagram and Facebook at Our True Crime Podcast or on Twitter with the handle at Our True Crime Pod. You can also email us at ourtruecrimepodcast@gmail.com. We would also at this time like to thank our patrons. We would be so lost without you. Thank you so much. And if you would like to help support the show, you can check us out on patreon.com/Our True Crime Podcast. You can also show your support by leaving a 5-star review on Apple or simply just tell your friends about us. It's that easy. Love ya.